You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith.
How you doing, Sprouts? Today is September 4th, 2019, and our topic today is adventure. An adventure is an experience into the unknown. Some people will claim that adventures have to be dangerous or bold or exciting, and a lot of times they are, but really when we distill it down into a single idea, an adventure is going out and engaging something, doing something, experiencing something that we are not familiar with. And sometimes that can be exciting. And sometimes it can be terrifying. But adventure, boys, is really important for you because it does three things for you. One, it helps you grow older and wiser. You learn something when you go on an adventure. You might mess up. You might get hurt. You might struggle with a crazy situation. But you learn more about yourself. You learn more about the world. The second thing, it builds confidence. When you accomplish something, when you finish an adventure, when you take on something you're not familiar with, you feel a little bit better about yourself. You feel a little bit more confident. But at the same time, if you rely on God and you ask God for help, you also grow in your confidence of our Lord. And you realize that He's with you at every moment, no matter what the situation is, no matter how crazy things get. And then finally, adventure builds your resilience, your ability to bounce back from failure. You see, boys, you're going to fail a lot. You're going to mess up. You're going to sin. Some of you will sin more than others. But by taking on adventures, right? Taking on things that you're not totally familiar with, doing it boldly, and trusting in God's grace and His strength to be with you, you will learn to overcome those things patiently and lovingly. And that's what's going to make you a saint. All right, lads. So that's all the philosophy, theology, and big fancy thoughts. Let me give you a couple of stories to kind of break it down a little better. The first one is St. Gabriel Possenti. If you guys haven't heard about him, you're missing out on life. Okay? So he was born, early 1800s. Born in Italy. I think he was born in Assisi. And as a young man, Gabriel Possenti was this really fancy dresser, really smooth talker. All the young ladies liked him. He was a really good dancer. He could shoot a pistol really well. He was a great hunter. He was a really good horseman. That means able to ride horses really well. At some point in his youth, Possenti contracted some sort of sickness. And the Blessed Virgin Mary came to him in a vision. And he, during that vision, he promised God, he promised Our Lady that he would dedicate his whole life to our Lord. But after he got better, right, after God gave him the grace to get over the illness, Gabriel Possenti forgot all about his promise. He got sick again. Except the second time, he had this vision of Our Lady, and she came to him, and she looked him straight in the eye, and she said, "Keep your promise." Well, that kind of shook him up a little bit, kind of woke him up, and he realized he actually needed to change his life. So he joined a religious order called the Passionists. And this kind of shocked his family. It shocked everybody because this guy, Gabriel Possenti was this really smooth kind of ladies' man. He liked all the girls. They didn't expect him to go out and become a religious monk, join this religious order. Now, this is the thing I want you to note about Gabriel Possenti's life. He was a young man. He liked adventure. He liked going out and doing some fun, exciting things, right? Going out and having adventures, hunting and shooting pistols and going out and doing things. He took that desire to go out and have these kind of exciting times in his life. He took that desire and he directed it towards God. And that led him to become a monk. What's kind of funny, there's a story that at one point these criminals, these marauders, attacked a village that Gabriel Presenti was in at one point. And while he was praying in the chapel, Gabriel Presenti heard this woman screaming because these marauders were beating her up or hurting her or doing something to her. And he got up out of his pew. He genuflected. Always remember to genuflect, boys, when the Blessed Sacrament is in the tabernacle. He genuflected, left the chapel, and then came outside. He walked right up to the bad guy, right up to this criminal, pulled the gun. This marauder had this gun. He pulled the gun right out of the guy's hand and forced him to let this woman go. But he wasn't done. After Gabriel freed the young woman, he then confronted the rest of the marauders with the pistol that he had taken from the first guy in hand. And in order to show how good he was at shooting, he shot a lizard that was running across the road at a pretty far distance and killed it. And the mercenaries all saw how dangerous this monk was and took off running for their lives. Someone else I want to mention, another saint that's a good example for you, is Francis Xavier. He was born in Navarre, which is in Spain, and was a really, really bright young man, went to the University of Paris, and eventually met another saint named Ignatius of Loyola. Well, at the time, Francis Xavier wasn't really religious, but again, kind of like Gabriel Presenti, he was one of these really talented young men, really wanted to, he liked to have fun. He liked to have adventure. Well, eventually, Ignatius of Loyola really helped bring him around to the faith. And Francis Xavier became one of the first, major Jesuit missionaries in the world. He went to India, Japan, China, and he baptized and helped convert thousands of people. And what you got to realize about him is he went to these countries not knowing the language, not knowing the culture. But he was faithful to prayer, and he adapted to every situation that came to him. Today's challenge is to get outside. Not sit in front of a TV or play video games. Find some way to get outside. And if you're listening to this at the end of a day, get outside tomorrow. Being outside is one of the greatest ways to encounter adventure. You're not in charge of the weather, Sprouts. You're not in charge of the bees that might bite you or the mosquitoes you might have to swat off or the interesting things you're going to find. Get outside, play sport, run around, use your body.
That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God intended you to be. One final word to the grown-ups. Thank you so much for listening to the Catholic Sprouts podcast. I would like to invite you to join a special Facebook group just for those that listen to the Catholic Sprouts podcast. We will use this group to connect, to share resources around that week's theme, and simply celebrate raising future saints. To find the direct link to the Facebook group, simply check the notes for this podcast episode.